Hello everyone. In this video we are going to look at what you need to get set up for your SQL course. This includes getting SQL Server 2017 downloaded and installed. You also need to get a copy of the SQL Server Management Studio installed, and you'll need to, in some courses, get a copy of Reporting Server installed, Integration Server installed, Analysis Server installed, and finally, Visual Studio 2017 Business Intelligence Development Studio installed. So with all of those installations, we need a video. And that's what this one is. So the first step is to look for SQL Server downloads. I just did a search on SQL Server, and it brought me to this page. Clicking on downloads presents me with this option. You can see the URL up here, and I want the developer edition. This is a free edition. It doesn't expire, and it has all the features. You can't use it for production, but it has all the features that a normal installation of SQL Server would have in production environment. So you can test it out, try it out, and then you have to pay the big bucks to get the actual production environment. But that's usually what a company does. As a student, this is the one you want. So I'm going to go ahead and choose Download Now. And I usually make a folder on my hard drive called Software, and I would download that. It only takes a second to download this part, and then when it shows up, yep, come on, I run it, and it brings me a splash screen that looks like this. Now from here, I recommend you go ahead and download the media. Now this will download several gigabytes files onto your hard drive, and then once that's done, you will have a local copy of SQL Server Developer Edition on your hard drive. At that point, you can go ahead and delete the file. Here it is. It's right there. Actually, it'll be right here. Excuse me. It'll be the ISO file. That's what it's going to download. And an ISO file sounds kind of scary, but it's really just a fancy zip file. You can either go through and mount it if you want. Windows has that option built in. Windows 8.5 and above, I think. But most of the time, I just unzip it using a free program called 7-Zip. Now, once it's unzipped, you'll have a folder with the media files in there, and you can run the setup file. And this is the way I recommend it because it gives you the most options. I also recommend you run it as an administrator by right-clicking on it and choosing that option from the context menu and starting up the installation. Now, once you have started the installation, you need to go through and choose Installation and install a new standalone installation or add features to an existing installation. You'll see that there is an install for Reporting Server, Reporting Services, another way of saying it, Management Studio, and the SQL Server Data Tools. We need all four of these in many of my classes. In some classes, all you really need is the SQL Server standalone installation, but I will tell you in text what is needed for your particular course. In this video, I'm going to go ahead and kind of highlight all of these features, and certainly having all of them won't hurt you. But be aware that you can stop in some classes, like my basic SQL programming class. All you really need is the first one. Oh, excuse me, that's a lie. You need the first one and the second one for Management Studios. Okay, let's get started. I'll click on the first link. It's going to check to see if everything looks like it's in good shape, if we got the setup files downloaded, everything's been unzipped, etc. It's going to check to see if there are other settings on my computer that might cause a problem. The firewall warning can be ignored. It just means that people cannot connect to your SQL Server from outside of your computer, and that's a safety issue. You want to leave that on unless you know what you're doing. So just go next, and at this point you can choose to install a new installation of SQL Server 2017. I already have an installation of SQL Server 2017 on my machine, but I can install as many copies as I want. In fact, if you look down below, you can see I have a whole bunch of installations. I have a SQL 2017 installation, a 2014 installation. I have a 2016 installation, I think that is. In fact, I actually have two 2016 installations. So you can have many, many, many installations of SQL Server installed. Each one has to have a unique instance name. The default instance name is MS SQL Server. I don't know why they didn't use the word default, but that's what they didn't. They didn't. So that is the default instance. Everything else is a named instance. I'm going to go ahead and choose to perform a new installation. Say next. I do want the Developer Edition. You'll see the Evaluation Express Edition is available as part of the download, but the Developer Edition doesn't expire, and that's the one I would strongly recommend. Next, read through the license agreement. Next, and you want the database engine for sure. You got to have that. In my business intelligence classes, so working with data warehousing, etc., we often want analysis server. We also want integration server in many of my classes. Integration server is used to import, export data, and generally move data around. Those three are pretty much key. If you're just doing a basic SQL programming class, all you need is the database engine, but it doesn't hurt to have any of these on here. All the rest of the stuff, you can just go ahead and leave off. There is, let's see, anything else that might be kind of fun to have? There's some other goodies that you can put on here, but to tell you the truth, unless you really know the basics or have gone through these classes with me previously, most of these aren't really going to be of much use to you. So just three things to check. And you can choose to put this on a different drive. I have a small fast C drive, and so I usually use a different drive to install SQL Server or other large software. So I'll choose that. And okay, named instance. You got to come up with some kind of catchy name. I've already called this one SQL 2017, which is not a bad name, just for the fact that it's easy to remember. I can call it, I don't know, test server. You could call it the name of your class if you want it for a particular class, but whatever you call it, just make sure you know what it is, because you'll need that to connect to it later on. Okay, and then next, it'll automatically move the instance ID in there for you. All these default settings are perfectly fine. I just leave them as they are and I go forward. And this is probably the most important page of the whole setup. Make sure you add yourself as an admin. You have to click on the Add Current User button. I don't know why they don't do that as default, but they don't. And you want to give yourself administrative rights. If you forget to do that, you won't be able to connect to your brand new SQL Server installation, which is really frustrating. There's some other settings you could mess around with, but you really don't need to. Just go ahead and just click on that one Add Current User button and then go next. If you've installing Analysis Server, you'll need to go through and add the current user again. Analysis Server comes in a bunch of different versions. The standard cube version, multidimensional, the tabular version, and kind of an oddball power pivot mode, which is probably not something you'll get into. For many of my classes, you'll want to install one or both. Unfortunately, you can't install both in one setting, so I will install the cube first, and then I'll have to come back and install the tabular version second. If I haven't told you to install the tabular version specifically, just install the cube version. Make sure you add the Add Current User, wait for it to populate, and then go next. And pretty much that's it. At that point, you hit the install. It doesn't take that long. The first time takes a little longer than the subsequent time. The first time was probably about 20 minutes, maybe a little less. After that, probably, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes. So very, very quick. Now, once that's installed, I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. You will need to go through and download SQL Server Management Studio. The link just takes you to the website where you can go through and download it. It is free, so click on that. There is an upgrade package if you've already installed it previously. I have, so I can go ahead and use that one. But in any case, I'll go ahead and download and install it. I've already have a copy here, so it's going to give me that funny number. And then the installation is pretty straightforward. There's not anything really that'll get you on this one. It's just rather large. It's almost a gigabyte in size, which for just a SQL editing tool seems a little bit much, but what can you do? Now, once that downloads, you'll find the executable. You'll right-click on it, run as administrator, and just let the installation begin. Again, there's not much to select or choose. You just click on the install button and let it cook. There is, I think, a chance to choose the path at some point in here, but going back to our SQL Installation Center, which will be down here, you may need to install the SQL Server data tools. And many of my classes, especially the business intelligence classes, where I'm working with data warehouses or ETL processing or various different reporting solutions, I may need to download and install this. Once again, it's pretty straightforward at this point. 2017 now seems to be pretty safe, so you can go ahead and install Visual Studio 2017. Let it download. I'll go ahead and cancel this one. And then just double click and follow the steps. The SQL Server database is already installed, so it should be in good shape, but it will install analysis server editing tools, reporting server editing tools, and integration server editing tools. This one can take a while. The reason is it relies on the .NET framework to be installed, the newest versions of the .NET framework to be installed. So it could potentially take I don't know, maybe an hour. Most people, though, will have it installed within 20 minutes or so. So just kind of prepare for that to be the case. As you can see, there's not a lot of steps here or options to deal with. It'll start the download. I think at some point it'll give me the option to choose a directory so I can put it on my D drive. Now at this point it's going to take a while for it to work, so I'm just going to let it cook and I will have to come back later. Because I'm running the video recording software, the installation is going to fail on me, and it does for other reasons too. But usually what it means, you just have to reboot. So I'm going to close everything down. I'm going to stop the video, reboot it, and I'll come back. Okay, as suspected, once the reboot was done, I just had to come back in, launch the setup file again, and with a couple of clicks, it brought me right to the setup completed. So everything was actually successfully completed. I just needed to reboot. Okay. So that installation is done, and since I had to reboot, I had to close down the setup again, which means I have to come back into setup, choose installation, and Management Studio is installed. The data tools are installed. The last one is reporting server. So I click on that. And choose download. During the installation of the SQL Server data tools, it never did ask me to choose a different drive. So apparently it's installing on C drive. There's probably a configuration file, but that's unfortunate that was the case. So you'll need at least a gigabyte or two. I think it's actually best to plan for like 4 to have room for that. And the installation of Reporting Server, I'll go ahead and run that. Nope, I need to run it as an administrator, just to be safe. Let's see, I want the developer edition so it doesn't expire. And let's see here. You need the database engine. I already have that. And that should work. This one actually did give me a choice to put it some different place. Fantastic. I don't anticipate this one taking very long, but it's a new installation. I haven't actually run through this installation, so we'll find out. And configure manual or customize settings, that is something that takes a little bit of work. So I would recommend that you can click on there. It'll bring up the configuration manager. But actually getting through and installing this can take some time. And usually I make a separate video for that. So I'm going to go ahead and say port installation. Yep. So that takes care of Reporting Server's installation. The configuration manager opens, and here you go through and configure the database to use to store the actual reports and snapshots of report data. That's going to need a separate video. Like I said, it's complex to set up. So we just close that down, and we have our installation for most of my SQL classes, which includes the database engine, reporting server, management studio, and the SQL Server data tools. Once again, you may not need all of these. It doesn't hurt to have them, but those are the 4 for my more complex classes, such as my business intelligence courses. You'll need the database engine and management studio for all of my SQL courses, but the other ones are optional. Well, that's it. In winter quarter of 2018, that's what you need to install. I imagine that'll probably work for spring quarter as well, and maybe even summer quarter, but Microsoft keeps changing things, so I may have to make a new video at those points. However, with any luck, this will serve your needs. You'll get everything installed like I did, and it should take an hour, but it can take more. Just have patience. Most of the times the problems are people don't have admin rights to their own computers. Make sure you check that what admin rights to your own computer means if you don't understand what I'm talking about. You need to be logged in as an administrator on your own PC in order to get everything installed correctly. That is the most common issue that people have. After that, it's a matter of running out of space. Make sure you have on your drive. C drive is going to demand some space, 5 gigs or so at least, and on whatever drive you're going to have install the software itself, make sure you have another 5, maybe even 10 a space. So those are the most common issues. If you have any more problems, make sure you ask me about them on the Canvas website. So go out to the Canvas website, ask questions on the discussion board. That way, when I answer them, everybody can benefit. If you have something more personal question, you can always ask me by Canvas email. After that, good luck, and I'll talk to you later.